Hey YouTube, welcome back to Universe X TCG or Uni X TCG, and you may be wondering, why is my face so shiny? I did this way too close to getting up, so my normal routine to not look like a scaly monster because I have eczema is still apparent on my face, so yeah, I'm pretty shiny. Point being, this video is about the meta that you should be expecting going into the very first treasure cups, which are happening simultaneously on the 4th of February. One being in Canada, Niagara Falls, the other one being in Long Beach, California. And yeah, in this video, we're just going to talk about the pluses and minuses of some decks, some kind of recalibrated takes, and why you should be kind of buckling yourselves in for a wild, wild ride. So, with that being said, I hope you guys like the content. We are going to probably cook out more One Piece content than we have before, mainly because while I still will continue doing my Dragon Ball Super content on the channel, Dragon Ball Super is not getting nearly the same amount of traffic as One Piece, and I have to do what's best for the channel. So I'm still going to be doing Dragon Ball content. Best believe I will not just forsake my day ones. I'm just going to be doing like more, like I'm going to be doubling maybe the One Piece content I try to do. So even before it's a 50-50 split, now it's going to be like, you know, still that 50-50, but just more One Piece. That doesn't make sense math-wise, but we're going to get into it. If you like the content, think about hitting that like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification button, and we will keep pumping out the content that you guys like coming here for. So let's jump into it. So moving into the topic, right? A lot of people generally want to know the skinny, the drop. They want to know exactly what they're going to have to prepare themselves against, and the answer to that, long story short, is everything. And I'm gonna dive directly into that. But most people know that the game is shifting. So far, we haven't had a singular major tournament. We've had box tournaments, case tournaments, a bunch of locals, but despite what anybody wants to tell you, their undefeated Zoro deck is probably just 6-0 at 2 locals. Their undefeated Croc deck has won a 4-round locals. There's not a lot of like just credentials to go off of, and even with like large sample sizes like my own, you really only have so much you can go off of. Like I can tell you, I have 6 different locals in my area. I could play 6 to 7 times a week, and then one of those tournaments used to be a box tournament that would go 5 rounds plus a top 8 cut. But at the end of the day, none of those are 8-round, 9-round events with top cuts for these massive prizes. None of them are premier tournaments. So everything can change and shift depending on what your local's meta is. For real, for real. I can tell you right now, we started off playing almost all red in Nova. It was red, a little green, a little like purple, almost no blue. Eventually, the green like matchup versus red became a known factor, and so more and more green started showing up and stifling red. Eventually, you know, you'd see that some people realized that you could play blue into green fairly well, only because green was still fixated on playing 3 to 4 of the 7-drop kids and 1 to 2 of the 8-drop kids, allowing blue to bounce back those 7-drop investments and then really put you in a bad space. Then you have more shifts in the meta, you know? Red starts playing more minus cards to coincide with Jet Pistol to get rid of 8-drop Kid. Why? Because 8-drop Kid is being played more because 8-drop Kid was walling blue decks. So now you have Red having a better matchup versus Green, coincidentally having a better matchup versus Blue now because they have more reach to kill things like Dofis and sometimes even Mihawks. Meanwhile, Kaido sat in the back doing Kaido things. Over time, you start seeing innovations to these deck lists that put them higher or lower on the tier. And now, after a full month and change of playing this game, I can go to my locals and see a healthy mix of every color. I see Kaidos, I see Luffys, I see Zoros, I see Laws, I see Blurple every now and then. Not as much though. I see Dofis a fair amount. I see Kids a lot. And so that is actually kind of how it goes. And I'm sure this has happened for your local, like, kind of just meta as well. But going into these tournaments, every deck has a valid reason to be played or not played. And because of that, we're about to see an influx of just decks being played. There's no cheat sheet. There's no, I'm going to see this deck more than any other deck. Now, granted, after Long Beach and after Niagara, which happened in the same day. They happen the same weekend. After those two, we're going to be able to look and see which deck topped the most and know that a lot of people are going to net deck. A lot of people are going to try to make innovations based off of that. And a lot of people are going to try to counter pick. We'll be able to make more solid hits post that. But for now, these first two tournaments, everybody's going to be coming with the deck they feel is best suited to win. And it's likely going to be the deck that they've had the most success with, the one they've practiced the most with. And I'm sorry, there's just not one single deck that does that. When you come to Zoro, right? We're going to talk about some pluses and minuses to everyone. Zoro is going to be able to get underneath people's strategies. You're going to be able to hit them hard and fast before they get their feet on the ground. And then you finish them off with Rush Luffys or Diablo Jambe leaders. And this is going to be a strategy that's tried and true. It has great matchups across the board. Versus the mirror, you actually have to kind of put some thought into it. But against Law, you have a high chance of rushing them before they can get off the ground. Against Kaido, you have a high chance of rushing them before they get off the ground. Blue can be pretty 50-50. You guys will both go back and forth and see who gets it. Now, green is your only scary matchup, and it really depends on how many times you can see a combination of Jet Pistol and a -2K to get over Kid effectively without wasting entire turns to them playing one drop. So red will still see it. Offshoot, you can be playing Luffy, and Luffy has the ability to play a lot more mid-rangey, which is going to give it a better opportunity to beat decks like green. Now granted, Luffy going mid-range sacrifices some of its viability versus Zoro that's low to the ground because Zoro will start punching it. They basically have the same card pool, except one of them is going to be getting to its juicier parts slower. It could also give Kaido a little bit more room to breathe in a matchup. Now, Luffy can still be very, very aggressive, but by going more mid-range, you open yourself up to areas that red normally didn't have to worry about before, which is the middle to late game. Now, moving on to another color, you have green, right? I'm not really gonna talk about Odin because that deck is, I feel like, kind of memey. Like, does it work? Yes. Does it actually do too many things that make it better than Kid? No. We're waiting for Kidman for next set for that. But for now, when you have Kid is able to have a lot of consistency. It's probably the deck that's closest to doing the same thing every single game, and I appreciate that. Consistency, once it starts rolling, much like Law, it feels ridiculous. You're hiding behind an 8-drop Kid, blockers, you're searching and drawing most of your turns, you're adding 2 to 3 cards to your hand per turn. It just becomes ridiculous. Now, when you're looking at that side, green's matchup that's best is generally low to the ground aggro red. You are able to wall up against red pretty well. Now, once again, they can see any combination of minuses and jet pistols that'll break your board. But if you're playing it correctly, generally you're going to be able to stabilize on red to a fair degree. Your deck is just more consistent. They have to draw into their bond. You can normally search them. There's a lot of factors to it. Against blue, it's a lot more 50-50 than I previously thought. I realized playing way more and more blue matchups that it's a matter of actually who draws and establishes better, because both decks can check the other deck. If green gets a 8-drop Kid and 2 blockers on the board and can maintain that amount of blockers, blue will likely never in the game break through that Kid. It's just not going to happen. However, Kid is a turn 10 play. The only time it's not a turn 10 play, 10 turn 10 play. The only time it's not a 10 Dawn play is when you play it on 8 and you have enough life to just leave yourself untapped. Hard to say, because sometimes you can get here. Sometimes you can't get there. Sometimes your opponent has put enough pressure onto you where you can't afford to just put a Kid up, pay 8 all of your Dawn for Kid, and then just leave your 2 life there. That's just sometimes scary depending on their board. So if you can do that, you can do that. But normally, Kid is going to be a 10 Dawn play because you want to be able to play him. You want to be able to, maybe search for the turn, and you want to be able to put a Dawn underneath him. Or a 9 Dawn play, even then. Now, when you do this, though, this gives your opponent a chance to play Virgo on 5 Dawn, Dofi on 7 Dawn, and Mihawk on 9 Dawn. And if all 3 of those happen before your Kid or by the time your Kid's here, chances are your Kid's not surviving a couple turns, because that's a lot of damage. When they untap after playing that Mihawk, they're going to be able to swing for straight up like 9K. Like, actually, just with what's on board, they'd be able to swing for like 10K by putting like, 3 3 on Virgo, and then they can swing for another one with Dofi, and they can swing for another 10 with like that. Yeah, for 7 Dawn, they'll be swinging for 10s across the board, and you're pretty much just gonna have to lose your entire hand if you don't have enough blockers. So that is honestly super rough. So yeah, you have to kind of establish that. Blue and green will fight for tempo, and you need to be able to establish the better board first, and that's not always in your control. I found that with me, that was pretty much what was getting under my skin. I was never able to establish against them quick enough. They were always curving out against me, and I found that playing against blue more and more, there are just sometimes where they don't curve out that way, and I can establish the 8-drop, and the game feels unwinnable from their perspective. So there we go. And then you face purple, and once again, you're at a point where if purple curves out correctly, it just curves out correctly. But if you're really aggressive, you can force them into a position where they can't ever board wipe you, and the game is pretty much yours from there. Moving forward, we have now got blue, okay? You're playing blue. Actually, no, let's talk about purple first. You're playing purple, and purple has pretty much the same game plan for everything. Like, you have to be sometimes more defensive with your cards in hand, but purple has the same game plan. If purple curves out, if purple goes Onigashima into queen, into a boss, into another, but like, you generally, purple is just the strongest deck in the format, bar none, if it doesn't crap out of itself. But the issue is purple can crap on itself. You can never see Onigashima, but only see boss cards. You can see a bunch of 2Ks, but never see boss cards and see ramp. You could see ramp, but no boss cards. Like, there's a lot of things that can go wrong with the deck, and it doesn't have searching. It only has drawing off of queen. And so you're really sitting in a position where you can potentially get really hurt by your own deck. But if you curve out, and people always do, there's always a Kaido and some top cut, maybe a couple, you're going to just effortlessly, for the most part, just blow through your opponents. So yeah. Now blue, I feel like, is just like Kaido, except it's worse. Blue has the ability to get thrashed or dome any other deck in the format. But even when blue draws optimally, it's not an auto win in some cases like Kaido sometimes feels to be. Blue can draw optimally and still get outpaced. But, I mean, against red, you guys are fighting for aggressive tempo. Red or blue could come out on top. Against green, like I said, you're fighting for board presence and stabilization. Either one can come out on top. Against purple, you were being the aggressor, and because you're swinging for 7Ks, they have to start dumping their 2Ks viciously. Like, you're literally forcing them to drop 2 cards out of their hand most times unless they have an extra, and you can really get there. Your board will get big, and if you press them enough, they can't board wipe you. A little bit better if you're running the Kumas into the Pacifistas, because then you're going to have insurance for getting board wiped. And against the mirrors, you know, it's just like any other mirror. Skillful, you have to know the matchup. You have to know, like, how to apply pressure because it's the same deck you're playing. Now, we're going to move on to some of the dual colors. You got Law, right? Law is very much so like Kaido and Dofi in the sense that Law can get thrashed by a lot of decks. Law can just become divine against a lot of decks. Against red, I feel like you have some of the most trouble because red is going to press you to the point where with your 4 life, you'll be dropping cards out of your hand a lot. Like, you do have 8 blockers, but red is going to be able to put on the tempo and attempt to push you into a zone where you can't recover from. So red is going to give you a mad dash for your life. Against green, green will not pressure your life the exact same way. Like, the pressure will come eventually. The leader with the dual swing does hurt once it gets online. But green is going to be able to tap a lot of your board and pressure your board so that your leader essentially stays a vanilla as long as possible. And that can be rough. Purple has the ability to, you know, just destroy your cards. And so it can, again, attempt to keep your board a vanilla or your leader a vanilla as long as possible. And blue is the one that's a little weird. Blue returns a lot of things to your hand, which is not good because Law has a lot of good play on effects or on play effects. That's the whole point. But it can also punch very hard. So it has like aggression, but not as much aggression as red, and it has disruption, but not as much disruption as purple or potentially green. So blue, I think, is the setup that Law probably thrashes the easiest. But the thing is, if Law just draws godly and you can't deal with its board, Law will run circles around any other deck in terms of advantage and board presence. So there is that. There's always some pluses and minuses. And then we can talk about Blurple Crocodile. The deck is definitely great at stopping a lot of small swings. You're going to be able to cantrip and counter out of so many things. But what Blurple Crocodile has issues with are the severely high attacks. And late game, they can even stop those. That's why, into Kaido, Blurple, Crocodile into Kaido is still fine. They've had enough time to build up the defenses to be like, no, I'm just going to stop that while I'm swinging on you heavy. But against Green, that can start going very tall very, very early because of the leader and the double swing. There's a lot of times where damage will just come through on Blurple Crocodile and they can't really do anything about it. Not to mention that if you save the Atomic Jet Pistol for the Crocodile, if they go and play the Crocodile 7-drop against Red, you have a chance to shut them out of the entire game almost and have a really big turn where they played for 7, didn't have enough to completely counter out with all their events, and then you just burst it off for 4 and then just proceeded to keep swinging. So there's pluses and minuses. But the whole point is, there is no way to see exactly what's going to be played in these first 2 treasure cups because every deck has a reason or a reason not to play it. And so you're going to have to get really, really crafty. The best advice I can give you right now is start getting your matches in as much as possible. You need to play until you understand exactly how to play your favorite deck versus every single matchup. So yeah, get in there, get that experience in, and I hope this video kind of helped you conceptualize some of your matchups going into the treasure cups, or even some of your matchups just going into your locals, because this information can pretty much be applied anywhere. So thank you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed the content, and I will see you in the next video. If you want to catch me on Twitch, I should be on there later today. Just pay attention to my community tab here. If you're not already, following, maybe follow the Twitch. It's in the description, or my Twitter. I'll post about going live in all 3 places, or the Discord. But I'll be playing One Piece Odyssey. So far, the game has been pretty cool. I like it, and I can't wait to play again today. I also got the Steelbook because, yeah. So yeah, that's pretty much that. Thanks, guys. See you later. Peace.